Gonna ball boy to the 20. Catching Usain Bolt. Look at the time. 9:58 world record.
Told you, all of my critics, I told you all that I was the greatest of all time.
You know, standing here with 19 championships is something I never thought would happen, you know.
Open. Chicago with the lead.
This is Critical Sports Talks, where we think critically about sports.
Yo, what's going on? Welcome to Critical Sports Talk, where we think critically about sports. I'm excited. Hello, my name is Daniel Foy, aka the Foy Wonder, nerd with swag. I'm excited to do this whole Critical Sport Talk. Kind of give you a little background of the reason why I want to do this. Very simple. I love sports. I'm a big sport fanatic. I'm a big fan of sports. I'm a big historian of sports, not just what's currently going on, but historically. One of my three favorite sports, obviously number one, basketball. As you can see, a young Michael Jeffrey Jordan here wearing the original Michael Jordan 1s, baseball, and football. Those are part of my three top sports I love to watch. And I'm a big fan of sport debates. I watched a lot of First Take with Max Kellerman and Stephen A. Smith. Also watched Undisputed on Fox Sports with Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp. Just kind of see these debates. And, you know, most of it is entertainment. And one of the things all these sport debaters talk about basically is who is the greatest of all time. Particularly in basketball and football. You don't hear much about baseball, which is kind of strange to me. There's a lot of great players in the Major League Baseball. Name a few, probably Babe Ruth. Probably Jackie Robinson of all time. Famous pitchers like Sandy Koufax, stuff like that. Ted Williams, stuff. I mean, I'm going old school with this. So, but one of the reasons why I'm doing this sport critical talk, basically, is because I love sports. I like to help people understand sports, even if you're not a sport fan. And I know you guys listen to this podcast or watching this video. You guys may be like, oh, I don't know about sports. I watched maybe the Super Bowl or maybe NBA Finals or the World Series or, the World Cup of soccer. That's okay. I'm going to try to make this as simple as possible, use a lot of, analogies and stuff like that. But I also want to help people think critically about just the sport they play or athletes play is just a game, or these people we watch are just athletes. They're human beings at the end of the day. They have jobs like we do. They probably get paid 4 or 5 times more than we do, but they're still doing jobs. And this is jobs that they love to do. They put a lot of passion and pride in what they do. And so, basically this is what I want to talk about, basically. So this is the whole thing. I'm going to talk about various topics, not today, but in the upcoming weeks, including about free agency and loyalty, about, talking about, social activism in sports, speaking up against all the stuff that we hear. I'm going to talk about, my personal takes of who the greatest of all time, or who's the greatest team of all time, particularly in basketball and football and everything else. And I would like to get you guys' opinion. So, but don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Foy Wonder Network. That's Foy Wonder Network. Please subscribe to that. That would be greatly appreciated. Spread the word. I also do a lot of, as you guys know, do a lot of voice acting, cartoons. I like to do audio Bible reading as well. And just funny stuff all the while. But today, I'm not going to do the adventures of the Foy Wonder, nerd with swag. I'm just going to be me, talk about sports. So if you're a sport lover, or if you just want to know about sports in general, please listen carefully. So I hope you guys enjoy it. But I want to talk about not necessarily who's the greatest player of all time or all that through sports, but I want to talk about what makes the greatest of all time. And we recently got a champion in the NFL. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers just won their Tom Brady won his 7th championship. Tampa Bay as a franchise won their 2nd one. And now people are saying that Tom Brady is the GOAT, the greatest of all time. And I will say I'm not a big Brady's fan. I'm not going to lie about that. But I get props when props is due. And I think Tom Brady definitely is the most accomplished NFL player of all time. I mean, this guy got 7 Super Bowl rings, 5 Super Bowl MVPs, 3 MVPs. I mean, this guy was picked in the 6th round of the 2000 draft. That is low. From being the 6th round to all the way that, I mean, it's you can't make this up. This is not Hollywood. This is real life. And even though I'm not a Tom Brady fan by any means, you got to get props where props due. And he won his 7th championship in his first season with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at age 43. Think about that. In a game of football, quarterback at age of 43. I mean, that is unheard of. And I'm going to talk about more about how athletes are playing a lot longer today than they ever did. Just the fact of we have better science, information, nutrition. Athletes are working a lot better during the off season. So their sports is not just the season. It's a 24/7, 365-day-a-week job for them. They don't stop once the off season. They keep going and going. Where back in the day, especially 80s basketball, these guys, just do whatever back in the day. So, I mean, there's a debate who got the best era of sports. I mean, we'll talk about later on. But what makes Tom Brady great, right? Or Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan, as you can see, I personally think he is the greatest of all time among all sports. 6-0 in the finals. Never went to a Game 7 in the NBA Finals. 10 scoring titles. One of 3 NBA players in NBA history to win an MVP and a Defensive Player of the Year award. 2 Olympic gold medalists in 1984 and in 1992. Accolades on accolades. He's currently the owner of the Charlotte Hornets. Unfortunately, as an owner, is not translate as a player. But we'll talk about that down the line. But I think Michael Jordan, everybody's saying sports all the time. But there are other people today's generation, right? Who think LeBron James is. He currently plays with the Lakers, which is my favorite team. Doing a fantastic job. Won the championship this past season, the 2020 NBA champions. Brought number 17 championship to the Lakers and LeBron James' 4th NBA championship as an individual. And I was happy for that. And I was a more neutral guy when it comes to LeBron James. Obviously, I'm happy LeBron's on my team. Brought a championship to the team. And, I think LeBron's one of the greatest leaders. But this debate, and I think we kind of lose when we debate. We kind of feel like we have to put people down to lift someone up. I always say, hey, recognize greatness. Greatness is greatness. It's all the whole same thing. Like, appreciate. I think we're so used to today that we have to tear someone down to bring somebody up. We don't have to do that. You have to recognize, especially these players, Michael Jordan and LeBron James, playing 2 different eras. So we can't even compare, obviously. I mean, it'd be different if these guys playing the same era. Because by the time LeBron got drafted, Jordan officially retired a 2nd time. So, I mean, it's really difficult to compare these guys, right? I mean, I think it's kind of a cool discussion to have at the barbershop or hang out with your friends, all that. But quite honestly, it's kind of futile. I think we have to appreciate greatness. No question, LeBron James is the Mount Rushmore of NBA players, along with Jordan, along with Kareem, up there, maybe some players with Bill Russell. So what makes the greatest of all time? One of the ways greatest of all time is championships. Pretty simple, very basic, right? I'm going to name a few players that you may be surprised. Maybe not surprised if you're a hardcore sport fan, but Bill Russell. How many rings did he win? He won 11 NBA championship rings in 13 seasons. Now think about that. Imagine if LeBron or a Kobe Bryant or a Michael Jordan won double digits NBA champ. I mean, these guys, it'd be off the stratosphere. But no one really talks about Bill Russell, Boston Celtics great. Why? Obviously, Bill Russell played in a totally different era in the 50s and 60s, particularly the 60s where his team, the Celtics, dominated that era. But there was only 8 teams at the time, 8 to 10 teams in the NBA. NBA was a very young league at the time compared now to 30 teams. So, but he dominated. He was a great leader. He was one of the best defensive players of all time. They didn't count blocks as a stat until after he retired from the game. So imagine if they counted blocks. He probably the all-time block leader. That's how dominant he was, right? He was about, at his game, 6'9", 220, 30 pounds, which is actually the same height as LeBron James now. But Bill Russell was a center. So different era at that time, but he was dominant. But no one talks about him, right? Obviously, we mentioned about Michael Jordan. Like I said earlier, he was undefeated. LeBron James, so I'm going to bring up to more current players. LeBron James won 4 championships, but he lost 6. He's 4-6 in the finals, which is above 50%. I think that's probably one of the things people put him down. Like, oh, he got 4 rings, and people say, oh, he's done. Like, the fact that he lost amount of championship as much Michael Jordan won, LeBron James out of the stats. But there are players that NBA or NFL, like, oh, they won rings too, a lot of rings too. For example, Robert Horry, surprisingly enough, played with 3 teams, played for the Rockets, Spurs, and LA Lakers. He got 7 rings total, guys. 7 rings as a role player. Now, we don't mention him as a GOAT because why? Why we don't mention someone who has more rings as Michael Jordan, right? We might not mention Robert Horry. He's a role player. He's probably one of the greatest role players of all time. So I'm not gonna discount Mr. Robert Horry, Big Shot Bob, Lakers fans like to call him. But he was a role player. He's not the guy. So obviously, if you're a champion, and you want to be great all the time, you gotta be the guy. You gotta be the guy, like a LeBron, like a Michael Jordan, a Kobe Bryant, Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, and all those guys. NFL, I'm going to go to the NFL, right? Obviously, Tom Brady has more championships than any other player in history. So I think that alone, he's kind of like, he was more of a Bill Russell player than I would say a Michael Jordan, because Bill Russell won 11 with the Celtics, and then Tom Brady won 7, 6 with the Patriots, and 1 with Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But I think a lot of people are like, as far as the eye test, what you see, and all that stuff, like, he wasn't the guy. There was probably great quarterbacks with more talented people like Aaron Rodgers or Patrick Mahomes. Even people say Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, recently got a Hall of Fame. Congratulations, Mr. Manning, on that. Who probably say are more talented, but Tom Brady was probably the most clutch. Like, you don't want to give that guy 2 minutes a game. If he's down by 3, and you give him playing time 2 minutes or less, maybe 1 minute 30 seconds. It's scary. Every time I watch him, and I'm cheering against the other team, whatever, because I always pick against them in every single Super Bowl. Only, obviously he lost 3-2 against Eli Manning and 1 against it's the Philadelphia Eagles. But if it's under, it's scary. So he would probably say one of the clutch NFL players of all time. And NFL is very complex too, because it's not 5-on-5. It's 11-on-11. There's so many positions. There's so many nuances of what things are happening. So it's really hard to measure grades all the time. Like, the closest person with rings as a quarterback will be Mr. Joe Montana. Joe Montana has 4-0. And people still to this day say Joe Montana is the greatest all the time. But, he didn't have the stats. Don't have the stats of Super Bowl as much as Tom Brady does. So I think it's a bias thing about that. And I think part of who you say, that's why I say what makes it opposed to who, because we all have our biases, regardless where you come from, where you were born, generationally. I hear a lot of young generation, anyone who's born in the mid to late 90s will probably say LeBron James, right? Because they never saw Michael Jordan. By the time they were able to understand sports, Jordan is more like the Jordan crime meme, right? People that crime meme Jordan, that's more people, kids today see Michael, where I see Michael as like, man, is great player, all time, sticking the tongue out, the Jordan shoes. So you got a generation by, and then people before me, my may say Michael Jordan, they probably were adults when they saw Michael, or even before that, they might say a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or a Wilt Chamberlain or Bill Russell. So we got that bias. So we got to recognize the biases we have, all right? So that's why I'm talking about what makes a great of all time, opposed who's the greatest, because it's going to be debate for all time. Someone's going to debate on that. Championships or win bouts. Like, I was definitely looking about Muhammad Ali, obviously, people he said he's the greatest boxer of all time. I'm the greatest player boxing of all time. I'm a bad man. I'm a bad man. He was definitely a bad man. I'm going to talk about what makes, the GOAT greatest of all time. But you know who won the most bouts of all time? Sugar Ray Robinson. Probably haven't seen his footage because it was back in the day, back in the 50s. I mean, this guy won over 200 bouts. And back then, boxing had 15 rounds opposed to today with 12 rounds. So think about that. That is insane. Think about the nutrition back in the day from the 50s and 60s, or even going 40s, compared to the 70s, 80s, and then 90s, 2000, even 2000. Now we're in the 20s, 2020, 2021. I mean, that is crazy to this day. I don't think anybody's going to fight over 200 bouts, or let alone win 200 bouts. Sugar Ray Robinson, great. I mean, and back then they had the gloves were more hard. I mean, man, different times. So we got to understand eras were different at that time, obviously. So, I mean, people don't hardly mention about Sugar Ray Robinson. I think average sport fans or boxing fans don't mention about Sugar Ray Robinson. But, man, he won over 200 bouts. That's insane, man. That is insane. But, in the age of social media, we're more focused here and now. We don't, appreciate the past. Not saying we stuck in the past. We don't do that, but at least appreciate the past because the past what makes the present. So, championships, right? Other aspect is stats. And I got my stats thing. So, if you love stats like I do, which I do quite a bit, here's a stat that I found in basketballreference.com. If you're a basketball head like myself, particularly, this is something, right? So right now I'm looking at the list of top scorers of all-time NBA scorers. So I'm looking up right now. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is the all-time scorer. He played majority of his years with the Lakers, but he got drafted by the Milwaukee Bucks. He has 38,000 points, over 38,000 points. Karl Malone, the mailman himself, played practically his whole career with the Utah Jazz, and I think in his career played with the Lakers. He's about over 3,600. Currently, active play today, LeBron James is at 35,000, and of course, the late great Mr. Kobe Bean Bryant has over 33,000. So all these stats, and Michael Jordan's number 5 with 32. So stats, right? I mean, if you're an analytic person, in other words, you like to look at stats, all that stuff. Great. Tom Brady, obviously, he got a lot of stats. I mean, I think he had the record for most touchdowns in a regular season. He beat actually Peyton Manning. Manning had that record for a little bit, and a couple of years later, it got shattered, right? Of course, NFL is so different than it's today as far as defensive schemes. I was watching old footage of players, defensive players like Deacon Jones. My dad brags about him a lot. Deacon Jones, literally would slap guys in the helmet. Back in the day, if you slap a helmet, it's like, oh, that's part of the game. You slap the helmet, you're injected, Different times, guys, different times. Keep that in mind when I'm talking about what makes a great all time. And sacks didn't exist when he played. So, if just like Bill Russell, when blocks didn't exist in the NBA back in the day, Deacon Jones played defensive end. Hey, sacks didn't exist. Because of Deacon Jones, they count sack as something else. And if you guys don't know what a sack is, it's basically when a defensive player hits a quarterback while the quarterback has the ball in their possession. So that's what it is. So that's pretty much, if you don't know what that means. But stats is great. I love stats. I think if you're a nerd like myself, I'm a nerd. I look stats like, oh, this and this. And ESPN does a lot of this stuff, which is great. But there's a lot of great players who have great stats that won maybe 1 or 2 championships, right? I think about, one of the players currently who I think is someone like a Joel Embiid, right? Joel Embiid plays with the Philadelphia Sixers. He's a center. He's probably having the best season of his career. He got drafted 3rd overall pick in 2014. He was hurt for the first 2 years, unfortunately, but he got great stats. But does he have what it takes to win a championship, right? Vince Carter, great player. Does he have what it takes to win a championship? So I think stats is a good measurement indicator how a great individual. But as you know, particularly in team sports, it's more than just stats. You got to work well with your team. How do you get along with the team? Do you understand the concept? Do you have a good coach? Do you have a good GM? Do you have a good owner? All these pieces is more than just what we see on the court or on the football field or on the baseball field, right? Great example again, I think of Sammy Sosa. Sammy Sosa during that 98, the whole, thing, Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, the home run, stuff like that. And obviously there was controversy with that, with the steroids era around the time of the 90s and 2000. But at that time, that was exciting, right? Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire. Sammy played with the Chicago Cubs. Mark McGwire played with the St. Louis Cardinals. And I've been watching that. I think it was like the 98 season. I was about 15 years old. And that was the one I actually really paid attention about baseball. Obviously, I'm a Dodger fan. Dodgers weren't doing well in the late 90s. Obviously, they won a championship. Shout out to the LA Dodgers all the way. I got to give that shout out real quick. But that 98 season was remarkable. Right? Great. But who won the World Series? It wasn't Sammy Sosa and the Chicago Cubs. It wasn't Mark McGwire and his St. Louis Cardinals. It was the New York Yankees with Derek Jeter. Derek Jeter, one of the greatest shortstops of all time. So I think a lot of times, people, especially today, generation, I think bring a lot of stats like, oh man, look at this. Oh, look how long the stats, boom, 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 boom. And it's true. I'm not discounting stats. It's part of the equation, what makes a player great. But, and if it comes to team sport, particularly, you got to, and in case of a case of basketball, you need 4 other guys to help you better. In case of football, you need 10 other guys better. In the case of baseball, 8 other guys, right? It's a team game. Now, when you come individual, whole different story. So shout out to Serena Williams, who has 19 championships. Arguably the greatest female athlete ever. Dominate in the individual level. So that's undisputed because it's just her, right? One-on-one tennis is undisputed. Boxing, one-on-one undisputed. Track and field, Usain Bolt, one of the fastest men alive. Got a couple gold medals with the Jamaican team. Dominate. So I think individuals a little more clear cut because it's just them. It's all them. It's just one-on-one. But with team sports, that's when it gets a little tricky. But stats does come with a benefit, right? And I mentioned, people say, oh man, people will say alone like, LeBron's better than Michael because he is 3rd all-time skill leader, right? But people all know Michael Jordan retired 2 times. He retired at the end of the 93 season and then retired again in 2003. Imagine if Jordan, like people like the what ifs, which I'm going to talk about what if stuff, all hypothetical, but it's cool to talk about that stuff. But the thing is, LeBron, just because he's 3rd all time, I would say LeBron's probably the most durable NBA player ever. I mean, that guy only had maybe 1 or 2 major injuries in his career. And even then, the guy's tip-top shape. He literally spends $1 million. Crazy, right? $1 million on his body. So think about that. Like imagine like Michael Jordan did that. And Michael Jordan was tip-top shape, fit, all that stuff. But man, imagine if LeBron James, or Michael Jordan did that. So I think, I don't put too much weight. It's there on stats, stuff like that. I'll go to a different sport. Boxing, knockouts, right? When you think of knockout artists, you think of what? Iron Man Mike Tyson. Now, to me, I remember watching Mike, this dude was scary. Scary boxer, man. I mean, he would knock people out. This is before the ear bite and all that. People like, all the hangover. I think average fans will focus on that. But no. But in the 80s, especially you guys who are older than me, who actually seen him literally back in the day in the 80s. I kind of watched highlights later on. This man was scary, right? He came with the weird towel. He didn't have like the typical boxing robe. He had a towel on him. I mean, he was just laser eye focused. And he did this like kind of bob and weave, left uppercut. Man, oh man. Watch his highlights. Watch his top 10 knockouts of all time. Go on YouTube. Please watch that because Mike Tyson is crazy in a way of dominance, right? Knockout artist. But like I said, with stats, you think of like a Floyd Mayweather, right? So I know a lot of people are not big fans of Floyd Mayweather, but he's undefeated. He's undefeated, never lost a bout, and you could debate how he got that. But if you just focus stats, not focus on the nuances, just stats. People will probably say Floyd Mayweather is the greatest of all time because he's undefeated, never lost, right? Obviously we know nuances, but that's why I said like the whole thing about what makes a great player all time is so many variables. You can't put one pinpoint thing. That's why I'm not focusing on who's the greatest. I'm focused on what makes the greatest, right? It's like we're just trying to make you guys think all that. So stats, right? I think the next part here that people don't really talk about is the intangibles. What I meant by that, leadership style, how they handle, the players, how they handle their teammates, how well they do that. Now, LeBron James, I would say, probably one of the greatest leaders, right? Because this dude will make you better. He will change franchises around. I literally, when LeBron James left Cleveland, his first time, left Cleveland, went to the Miami Heat, joined Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. I mean, the Cleveland economy went down. Literally went down. And then again, when he left Cleveland and went to the Lakers, the economy went down. I mean, this guy impacted not only his teammates, not on the franchise, but the city itself of Cleveland. He's from Akron, Ohio. He's born and raised person from Ohio. So the fact that he left his city to go play, wherever, Miami, and then he left again to play with the LA Lakers. This economy of Cleveland, Ohio, went down because of LeBron James. That's crazy, right? But his leadership, but players, I like to look at LeBron James. You know who else was a great leader in Intangibles? Magic Johnson, which I think is the most exciting player, greatest passer of all time. If you don't know Magic Johnson, please watch his highlights. I mean, he was the perfect player. Smile, everybody got along, fancy passes, no look pass. You do the just all around good guy. But he was a very hard competitor, and he was a great leader. He made everyone else better, right? He made everyone else better. The Intangibles also talk about work ethic, right? Work ethic, I immediately think of Kobe Bryant. I want to shout out to Kobe Bryant, the late, great Kobe Bryant. Kobe work ethic was insane. If you got the Mamba Mentality book, I highly recommend that to know about Kobe's mindset and mentality of how he became one of the greatest NBA players of all time. I highly recommend that book. Kobe Bryant, his work ethic is cray-cray. It's insane of how much he is dedicated that. And I wish you watched a little thing about the Shaq and Kobe beef. I mean, literally Kobe, when he won his first championship in 2000, can't believe it's 21 years ago. That's insane. Think about that. But in 2000, when he won his first championship, Shaq, obviously had a great time, had a party, stuff like that. Really cool, celebrate. It's natural. Nothing wrong with that. You won the championship, you're gonna celebrate. Hey, flaunt it, do all that. Kobe literally 2 weeks after he took a 2-week break, went back to the gym, do his thing, right? Kobe wanted to get better and better. And, part of that, it was that drive, that mentality. And people say, like, the Mamba mentality, where he got that Mamba mentality from originally. Obviously, from his history of his life. But it's from Jordan. Jordan was a competitor, right? And going back to leadership, Jordan, if you watch The Last Dance on ESPN, on Netflix, Jordan's leadership style was very different from LeBron. LeBron was very, kind of like a rah-rah guy, bring people together. Jordan is, you got to play to my level. I'm going to lead by example. I'm not going to be nice. He's not going to sugarcoat stuff. He punched one of his teammates, current coach Steve Kerr with the Warriors. But when Steve Kerr was a player, played with the Bulls, Jordan literally punched him. And I think today, like, no, my goodness. But Jordan was so driven. and so competitive that he want all of his teammates to be that level. And it made him great, right? And will that work today's NBA players? Maybe not. Probably not. It's different time, different era. But back in the 90s, I mean, Jordan, people were scared of Michael. His teammate was scared of him. But they won 6 championships. Different style. But, would I pick that style? Like, nah, probably not. I'm more of a diplomat type of guy. But, the competitiveness of Michael, man, it was insane. So, I think of Magic. I think of that. Bill Russell. Bill Russell was a great leader. If you don't know his leadership, he was actually the first black head coach in the NBA. And he was a player coach, which is never heard of till this day. Basically, he was playing on the court and coaching too. So that's not going to happen again. But he was a player coach and won a championship as well, which total of 11 rings and 13 seasons. Man, it's just wild, how, these athletes are. But, we focus on the present moment and different time. So, Bill Russell, wow, player coach, all these intangible players, all that stuff. So, let me know what you guys think about, the intangible other athletes. Like Tom Brady, right? Tom Brady, I think Skip Bayless mentioned, like, they call him Psycho Tom. Like, Tom Brady is just, all smiles, but he's getting a little competitive sometimes. I mean, it's insane, but everybody has different leadership styles. So I think intangibles plays a role of what makes the greatest of all time. And a last part I want to talk about is cultural impact. I think that's very underrated. When I meant cultural impact, what great players do off the field, how they contribute to the world at large, how they transition out of sports into the real world, right? I could think of Muhammad Ali, right? Muhammad Ali was a civil rights activist as a boxer. He couldn't box for 3 years because he refused to go to the Vietnam War. At that time, he spoke against injustices, racial injustices, all that. Great icon. I think a lot of people use that, like, not when they talk about Muhammad Ali, they don't just talk about his boxing skills. He was very dynamic, very flashy, but they also talk about what he stood for, right? He took 3 years off because he knew there was something bigger than beyond the sports of boxing. Guys like LeBron James, who is probably, also, arguably the great player of today, but speak against injustices. He's outspoken about that. Impact of that beyond the court, build schools around his hometown, Akron, all that stuff. Different type of cultural impact, right? Michael Jordan, in a sense of cultural impact, that whole, like Mike, literally wearing his rookie, this is his rookie season picture right here, wearing the Jordan 1s. As a kid, I always want to be like Mike, I had the shaved head, like, which, now came to fruition. So I got that part about Mike, but Mike was a cultural icon. People want to be like Mike, jump like Mike, people do moves. Like Kobe Bryant is literally the remix version of Michael Jordan. I think Jalen Rose, who is a ESPN analyst for the NBA, and I think it was back in the day when they talked about it, they said, like, Jordan is the original, but Kobe Bryant is the remix, baby. And so, I think a cultural icon like that. Other players I could think of cultural impact. Bill Russell, Jim Brown, who played for the Browns back in the day, was also a social activist of stuff like that. You think about different players, different soccer players all around. Pele, you guys, shout out to Pele, who played for Brazil national team. Pele was a national icon, not only in Brazil but around the world. Stuff like that. Serena Williams, who impact a lot of women to do so many great things. So, cultural icon is a huge thing. And a cultural impact, because I think that makes things, because as much as it could be great, you have to transcend beyond the sport, right? If you're known more, because Muhammad Ali is known for both his boxing and what he's done in the community, right? LeBron James, when all said and done, he's going to be known by that. Kobe Bryant won an Oscar 2 years after he retired from the NBA, won an Oscar for their basketball. He was going to do more stuff than just basketball and stuff like that. So remarkable, right? So I think the whole point of this topic of what makes the greatest of all time is to really help you guys really think of appreciate greatness. I think that's where I'm coming at the end of the day, is to appreciate greatness, whether it's what you see currently with players, athletes today, what you see in the past, and what, new players, right? Zion Williams, I want to get a shout out to Zion Williams. So he plays with the New Orleans Pelicans. This guy is something else. I watched some highlights on the big comeback against the Boston Celtics. I mean, he is something else. I mean, if he keeps healthy, do what he can. I mean, he's gonna be one of the greats for sure. It's too early to say. He's only his second season, but I would say he'll be one of the greats player like that. Odell Beckham, if he doesn't get hurt, wide receiver for the Browns, definitely is gonna be really good. Deshaun Watson, who's trying to get out of Houston right now, the Texans, he's gonna be one of the great quarterback. Patrick Mahomes, shout out to Patrick Mahomes. I know he lost a Super Bowl, but man, this guy is already great only in his third season in the NFL. So you got to appreciate greatness, past, present, and future. But yeah, that's something I want to help, the viewers who are watching it or podcast, you guys listen to it. I really want to recognize, so just appreciate greatness, y'all. Just appreciate it. I know, it's so easy to hate, like, oh, that's not my guy like that. And, for me, like, I'm not, like I said earlier, I'm not a Tom Brady fan, but you got to give him props. That guy got 7 Super Bowl rings. I mean, that's harder to hate at that point, So, and then, for me, of course, Michael Jordan, but I also appreciate players and athletes beforehand, like a Bill Russell. He's an icon in the NBA community, or shout out to Jerry Rice, he's undisputedly the best wide receiver ever. Yeah, I don't know if you could say Megatron, like Calvin Johnson or TL. No. It is clear cut Jerry Rice, the man. All right, if you want to debate that, let's other day at a time. But I just want to give a shout out to past, present, future athletes, and just appreciate greatness. So that's pretty much what I got for today, this evening, what time zone you're listening at. Yeah, so that's it. So the next topic, I'm definitely going to talk about loyalty and free agency. How is that an issue? Because nowadays, guys move all around, different teams, especially in the NBA, which is cool because I love like off seasons. Like the most exciting thing, like the off season in the NBA is almost just like exciting as the regular season or playoffs. But guys like, oh, who's gonna be like that? But is it good? Is it good for sports, right? Or is it like the old school, like a Kobe Bryant who spent his entire career with one team, like a Dirk Nowitzki, Dallas, or Tim Duncan with the San Antonio Spurs? Or, hopefully maybe Steph Curry, who's currently playing for the Warriors, play his entire career with the Warriors. So I would like to talk about that. But please subscribe on my YouTube channel, Foy Wonder Network. Has all that stuff. We'll have my video, all that stuff. But thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you so much. God bless you guys. I hope you guys are doing well. And yeah, until then, this is Critical Sport Talk, where we think critically about sports. Peace.